This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is April 28th, 2025. Yay for us, we're almost into May. As usual, I would like if you would share this podcast with someone else, and then hopefully they will subscribe based on the content and the information value. Today, I want to talk about the U.S. federal government policy on the IRS Civil Rights Office. Why taxpayers should be outraged that this office exists. That's right, I said it. This actually is the IRS DEI office that was established back in 2022 when the Democratic Congress got funding for the IRS. For the purposes of the article I read, to get your attention and to get you outraged, they said it was a civil rights office. Now, why am I talking about this? This office in particular doesn't make any sense. So let me lay some foundation. When they established this DEI office, here is specifically what the office is supposed to do. So it is full participation of all people, particularly groups who have historically been underrepresented or subject to discrimination based on identity or disability. Now, I've said this in some other podcasts. Discrimination is covered under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Disability was done in 1981. So right off, who are they talking about? In the previous podcast, I told you that the office of the president, when they talked about DEI, they specifically used the civil rights heading, and then they added immigrants. So it was immigrants that were the target. Remember, when they were talking about people being in the country illegally and people working, not filing taxes, that's who they were talking about, that they wanted the IRS to defend them from having to pay taxes and also to even identify who they were. The Biden administration did that. So I laid the foundation. Now, here is what the office was actually doing. And before they took down the website, here's what it is. It has fewer than 200 people who work there, and is also with compliance. So basically, the compliance part is to make sure that law enforcement doesn't harass people that are in the country illegally and even ask them questions about pay and if they're paying taxes and all of that stuff. Now, and like I told you, it was called the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Just for the article I read, they threw out civil rights to get people outraged about it. Now, this IRS office doesn't make sense to me for several reasons. The first one is I filed my taxes every year since I was 19, and at no time have I ever been asked what group I'm in. So that in itself means that how would they know who you are? Now, people can say that it was based on the last names, but everybody has different last names that look differently. So that's not a good reason either for this office to exist. Also, this office, so as of April 4th, the Internal Revenue Service began making sweeping cuts to its workforce. The agency's leadership said, and they did this via an email, and among the first to go will be employees in this DEI office slash civil rights office. Like I said, this was the only article that I could find about it. So the author of the article keeps sliding civil rights office into there. Now, the target was 20 to 25% of tax collecting agencies' workforce. So, unlike what the mainstream media was saying, they weren't just targeting people at random. It was these 200 people who were DEI funded to protect people's rights of color, disability, underrepresented, and all of those things. And we got to be careful. So when somebody says that you're underrepresented, I'm not sure what that means tax-wise, because the thrust of what I'm telling you is this office did not need to exist. So they've also said that this office will cut the workforce and then they're going to move underneath another office. So contrary to what the mainstream media was saying, they're not getting totally rid of all of the IRS DEI office. Like I said previously, I was shocked that this office even existed. And I did a podcast about the DEI programs almost a year and a half ago, so you can go back and look at that content. We have to make sure that we have a fair IRS system, and as far as I know, it is fair. People should be audited, but it should be audited based on what they have turned in. There is no scenario, in my opinion, where what somebody looks like comes into question with the IRS, with the exception of illegal migrants who were working in the country illegally. Now, the Doge and the President Trump, caught a lot of fire about this. Why did they catch the fire? Because no one explained what they were actually cutting. And probably if you would have went out to the Doge website, they would have told you. And that would be my one criticism of them. You have to dig into the details of what you are doing. You can't just let the mainstream media fire off and say the words like civil rights office and you're firing like 40% of the workforce. Of course, people are going to be outraged about that. Now, with the IRS office, maybe not so much because they can't do as many audits. Now, when I went to their website, the IRS, they're still going to do audits. So make sure that you're turning in everything and that you haven't done anything that is questionable. Now, I want to piggyback on two things that really jump out. Okay. The Disability Act covered that people cannot be discriminated based on their disability. That's already out there. And again, I think on the IRS form, it asks you if you're blind, but as far as I know, even with that one, I don't remember them specifically identifying people that have disabilities. Maybe they do that, but it would have no bearing on the taxes that they're paid or the exemptions. If you are blind, for example, you can get an exemption. So I'm not understanding how anybody could be discriminated against. To point it out again, it was for the illegal immigrants to keep the police from challenging them. So, in general, what we have to do is we have to be informed, through me, of course, of some of the good work that is being done by the Department of Government Efficiency and not jump to conclusions and dig into some of these details to see that maybe, perhaps, some of these government functions are not needed or wanted, and give the process of downsizing the government a fair shot at working so that our taxpayers are not paying in as much money. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think. Have a great day.